There was a family on their way down south, and they had gone as far as they could go, and they made their way, and they were driving on a dirt road. Storm came, the lightning started flashing. The young man that was driving the car lost control of the automobile, ran off the road, and everybody was all right except him. They got out of the car, and just across the dirt road was a white house. They took him across there to that white house and knocked on the door, and the white lady came to the door and said, "Can I help you?" They said, "Ma'am, if you just let us, our brother just got in an accident. We want to just come in and make a telephone call. We want to call the doctor." They walked in, and daughter got on the phone, and the phone kept ringing, and there was no answer. Finally, somebody picked up the phone and said, "I'm sorry, but the doctor's not here. He's out on his rounds." Somebody say yes here. Well, the daughter put that phone down and went back into the living room, and the little children, they were sitting there crying. They were all sitting there crying. And by that time, Grandmama had got out of the car. She made her way across that dirt road, and she walked up to it and just opened up the screen door, and she peeped in and she said, "How's my son doing?" And they told her, said, "Mama, we tried to call the doctor, but he was out on his rounds." She said, "Child, let me come in." She walked in and she looked at that white lady. She said, "Ma'am, do you have a closet?" She said, "Ma'am, do you have a closet?" The white lady looked at her and said, "If you want to use the phone, you can use the phone." She said, "No, ma'am, I don't want to use the phone, but I want to call my doctor, and I need to go to the closet." Wait a minute. She made her way to that closet, and there was just enough room for her to get in there. She walked in that closet. The children were walking behind her. She walked in that closet, and she closed the door, and before she talked to the Lord, she said this: "Come on. Come on in the room. You look my dog and you're right side on my street. You give me all my medicine in a room. Tell my teacher I can come on in the room. Tell my teacher I come on in the room. Jesus is my God, and it right side on my street. He gives me all my medicine in my room. After that, come on in the room. Tell my pastor, I say, come on in the room. Oh, Jesus is my God, and he right side on my street.
The Morning Fix live radio show will begin shortly. For your best news coverage and commentary, tune in daily at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on The Morning Fix. The Morning Fix live radio show will begin shortly.
Come on in the room. Jesus is my doctor. Oh, what's up? What's up? Happy Sunday. It's a somber Sunday. There was a funeral this weekend. BLM was absolutely buried this weekend, and a lot of people are still in mourning. A lot of people are in mourning. A lot of people weren't really sure how to handle the shock of the dismantling of an organization, nor were they able to separate the organization from the movement because, well, you know, they are one and the same. So I decided to wear white. I felt pure and I felt vindicated while watching them be excoriated. It was great. That's a big word, like mayonnaise, you know, excoriated. But yeah. So today, I know a lot of people want to talk about Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker and stuff like that. And Herschel Walker can actually debate, and it was actually really, really good. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to take fragments of the greatest lie ever sold. We're going to kind of chop it up, have a discussion, and I think we're going to pick apart parts of that. So I hope you guys are ready for a very serious and somber show, because I don't know about you guys, but my heart is just, no, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm happy. I'm actually happy. I'm very happy about the whole thing. Why? Because this gives me a chance to do that Randy Travis and Carrie Underwood thing, which is basically, I told you so. Saddest part is we've been telling people for years. BLM, the organization, the movement, whatever you want to call it, is one and the same. It has been nothing but an extension of the Democratic Party. They have been nothing but grifters making their money off of Black pain and suffering. And of course, they want to reverse that and put that on Black conservatives and things like that, like Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum and AB. And yeah. So today we're going to pull those arguments apart. So I hope you guys are ready for a good show. All right. Be right back.
here trying to show them that we're angry.
This is not just about George Floyd. It's about everything that's happened in our world.
For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is something that I find to be despicable, and it is something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from Black liberals and Black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be Black, is you have to say this was wrong and that this, this person was amazing. I won't do that. Why are we pretending that this criminal should be upheld as a citizen, as a martyr in Black America? A martyr for a fake narrative, by the way.
People were shocked, right? They had all thrown themselves in emotionally based on the media narrative, and they just sort of thought, how could the media not have told us this?
So, Black Lives Matter, the hashtag, started really circulating around about 2013 to beginning of 2014. And then Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, and it exploded onto the scene. Of course, they were talking about a white police officer and a young Black child who was just going to the store to get some Skittles and et cetera, et cetera. It turns out that was bull. That was not the case. First and foremost, Zimmerman was not a police officer. He was the captain of the neighborhood watch. Second, he also was not a white man. He was Hispanic. Third, Mr. Trayvon Martin was also he was almost a grown man. He was 17, but not quite a grown man. And also, Mr. Trayvon Martin, when he was able to get away from George Zimmerman, decided to go back and confront Zimmerman. They got into a scuffle, into a fight, to which Mr. Trayvon Martin was basically on top of him, MMA style, according to the witness testimony, and slamming his head into the concrete. So George Zimmerman ended up shooting him. Now, do I think George Zimmerman should have been pursuing him in the first place? No, absolutely not. Do I think that Trayvon Martin should have died like that? No, I don't think anybody should have died like that. But this is what BLM does. Then you got Michael Brown from out of Ferguson, Missouri. I know you guys remember that one. The story that we hear, this was this gentle giant, hands up, don't shoot, in the alley, And the police officer just shot him for no reason. Turned out that wasn't true. So Mr. Michael Brown had just strong-armed robbed a convenience store because he was a giant. The police officer was in his cruiser and approached him. He comes over, starts punching the police officer through his open window. The police officer shoots him in the shoulder. He runs. The police officer pursues Mr. Brown in the alleyway, corners him, hands up, hey, gun drawn. Does that stop Michael Brown? No. Michael Brown decides to charge the police officer and try to get his gun. He ends up being shot again, and he lost his life. Do I want to see anybody lose their life? No. But at the same token, you mess around, you find out, you end up losing your life. Nah. I'm not going to sit there and act like that you're some sort of hero. I'm not going to turn you into a martyr. Excuse me. My allergies are killing me, y'all. I'm not used to this crap. We can go with almost every major case. We can talk about Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was knee-deep in organized crime in Louisville, Kentucky. Her ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover, he's a big deal in my city. He's a big dealer in my city. Everybody knew what he was into. And this is her boyfriend. Not to mention, she rented a car and had a dead body in the back of it. But, of course, Black Lives Matter and the media portrayed her as just an innocent Black woman in bed asleep. That wasn't the story. That wasn't the case. Jacob Blake, he just went to his ex-girlfriend's house to stop a fight, And the police just ended up just shooting him in his back. They rioted, burned the city down. Wasn't the case. The latest one, Techley Sundberg. This one actually just blows my mind. Techley Sundberg, disturbed young man, decides to shoot through the walls of an apartment into an apartment where a young lady was cooking dinner for her children. Her Black children, by the way. Black Lives Matter Well, the police end up confronting Mr. Sunberg, have a standoff, Mr. Sunberg lost his life. Black Lives Matter had the audacity, the absolute gall to come up there and actually they it's hard for me to even say, it's hard for me to get that out. It just blows my mind. They had the audacity to protest in that man's name. And the mother, this is the part that broke my heart. The mother is out there screaming about it. Would y'all have had the same energy had that been my kid? Had that been my kid? Had that been my children taken out by him? No, y'all wouldn't be out here protesting. Y'all wouldn't be sitting here marching. And she's not wrong. Did they sit there and march for Sequoia Turner, the little girl who was killed in Atlanta during the riots? No? Didn't he? No. But they want to talk about Rayshard Brooks. They want to talk about Rayshard Brooks, who was fighting. The police officer did everything in his power to give this man a break. He had fallen asleep. He was like, hey, just pull over there, sleep it off, whatever you got to do. The dude ends up running over the curb. He comes back to him. The next thing you know, there's a scuffle. He grabs the police officer's taser, tries to run, turns around, fires the taser at the police officer's face, and he gets taken out. But we're supposed to be all upset about that. But you're not in the street for flipping Trinity Randolph, little girl in Louisville. But y'all and the BLM activists want to sit there and yell at little girls going to a cheerleading competition. A cheerleading competition. Saying the only reason y'all get to have these nice things and wear these cute little uniforms is because of your white privilege. The problem is that wasn't just little white kids. And what did you just do? You're sitting here yelling at little white children. You're calling them all kinds of horrible names. Little black and white children, little girls who are going to a competition who had nothing to do with this. And that makes you feel bigger and badder to yell at these kids. That's why I could never stand with that organization. I could absolutely never. So, don't look. It blows my mind. They had a chance to actually unify, to bring communities together and bring awareness to a situation. Like I could have been on board if they talked about the Andre Hills. And of course, the name just bothers me anyway. Black Lives Matter. Yes, we know. And I'm not going to sit here and act like all lives matter, because they don't, because I don't really care very much about pedophiles. I don't really care much about murderers. I don't very much care about people who beat their wives, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to sit here and act like all lives matter to me. But we had a chance to bring awareness to a situation it's not even really a pandemic, but you could have just brought awareness to it. You could have talked about the Andre Hills, the William Greens. But then on the same token, you would have had to turn around and talk about the Trevor Sievers, the Daniel Shavers, the Hannah Williams, the Tony Tempas. They had to be an all-around thing. Like, we could have figured out something together, like, how do we make policing in America more streamlined? See, me, I was all for making sure that every police officer had a body cam. And anytime they came out of that car, that body cam automatically starts recording. But that costs money. You can't defund the police for that. You have to refund the police for that. So I could have been all aboard. I could have been with that. But it wasn't. That's not what this organization was about. That's not what they were really for. This organization has been nothing but a fear-mongering tool of the Democratic Party. This was a way to control the emotions of a voter base. And let's be real. Majority of Black Americans vote Democrat. And if you ask them why, most of them couldn't even tell you. But they'll say, well, the Republicans are racists. To which I always say there's been racists in both parties since the parties were formed. So now it has to be about policies. How do the policies help your community? You're telling me that the Democrat policies help the Black and marginalized, whatever you want to call it, communities. I don't really look at it like that. You're telling me that Democrat policies in Chicago, Democrat policies in Baltimore, Democrat policies in Philadelphia, Atlanta, St. Louis, Jackson, Mississippi, have been working for Black people. And I call bull. I call bull. I say, if anything, they have been a detriment. And then you have Black Lives Matter sitting here stirring the pot. But, you know, Maya Angelou once wrote a poem and said, if a person shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. See, when BLM first came out and they had their mission statement on their page, it was, we are here to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family. In other words, they didn't really care for the mother, father, son, daughter dynamic. They wanted to disrupt it because this was a group of lesbians, Marxist trained lesbians. And let's be real, they didn't do much for the community unless you were Black and gay. There was a stipulation. You had to be both Black and gay. Then they would help you. But I'm so glad Candace Owens and others who were brave enough, and I say that with high hopes, were brave enough to stand up against the machine. So, all right, let's get into this. We got some clips prepped up for you guys. So we're gonna play a few of these clips and then we'll talk about it. Cool? All right, here we go.
Hi, very nice to meet you, Alvin. Hey, Teresa, how are you?
How you doing?
So you guys, in many ways, were some of the people that were the closest to him.
Yes.
And I don't remember seeing your faces on the news or anybody talking to you. So I guess let's just start with that. When was the first time you met George?
Oh, well, I first met him in 2017. We ended up knowing each other. He was in the treatment center, and I actually was there too, but I was there for the alcohol, and he was having problems with the pain pills. So when we met, we was unaware that this was, we both was in the same situation.
So you guys met, and you figured out that you were going to the same treatment center, and I think, did that probably establish an instant connection between you two?
Yeah, because, during that time, you talk about a lot of
So in case y'all are wondering, George Floyd had a substance abuse problem. I mean, the man had a record as long as most people's arms. And the case in point that they're talking about right now, which is the George Floyd case, I should have probably set this up for y'all for those who aren't novices or who aren't knowledgeable about the George Floyd case. But I feel like we've had 2 years of gaining plenty of knowledge, but some people are still ignorant of the facts. So George Floyd went into a convenience store, or his friend went into a convenience store and tried to pass off some counterfeit bills. The store said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to use those here. Don't bring those back in. They leave. George Floyd goes into another store, tries to pass off these bills. He ends up leaving. They call the police. So the police get to Mr. Floyd while he's in his car, and he's already in an agitated, excited state. Usually that is correlated with drug use. And the person that he was riding with also happened to be his drug dealer. So yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. And Mr. Floyd ended up having a confrontation with the police officers. He was resisting arrest, et cetera, et cetera. And Derek Chauvin ended up being called in to help control George Floyd, who, like I said, was in an agitated state. And Derek Chauvin ended up placing him on the ground at Mr. Floyd's request because he said he was claustrophobic. He didn't want to sit in the back seat of the car. They place him on the ground in control position. He tries to get up. They put their knee on his shoulder blade to control him, and another one controlled his leg. Another police officer controlled his legs. But the left, the left politicians, Black Lives Matter, and the news all framed this as if that Derek Chauvin asphyxiated George Floyd, just kneeled on this man's neck for 9 minutes. But Candace Owens actually goes through the sources and just destroys that whole flipping argument. So now it's been set up. So let's get back into it.
Things that led you to where you were, and you get an idea of who the persons that are around you, more one-on-one. And he was real open about, things he was going through and what he wanted to be. And his old dream was to get his life together, and have a good job and be able to take care of his daughter as well as his family.
He wants a fresh start, and he wanted to do better, and he happens to run into you, and this is a beautiful home.
The Floyd that I knew in this house was a good person. And if he did do something bad, he hid it from us. He didn't do it around us. If he did it out there, he did it out there. That's his business. It's not mine.
Addiction is hard.
Yes.
It's full stop hard.
Right.
But family is different. It's a different part of them, and so the struggles that they're maybe facing out on the street is just not something that they ever want to bring to their doormat,
And that was Floyd. I mean, if he did have addiction out there, he left it in the streets. He never brought it home.
Sometimes a little urge to get something stronger to kill the pain, took over, but he always fought against that.
He was talking to me. He said, T. He said, I do whatever the police tells me to do.
Yeah.
He said, because they looking to kill a big brother like me.
Yeah.
He said that out of his own words. He said, because a big end like me, he said, they looking to kill a big brother like me. And sure enough, that's what happened.
So I need to address that part. I want you to understand what has been said right there. That has been a narrative that has been pushed for years. And I've said this same thing for years, that is eventually going to get someone hurt or killed. If you tell people that someone is out to get them, if you're constantly telling people that the police are out to get you, that they are out to kill you, that they are out there to take your life, et cetera, what do you think you're doing? You are setting people up to really believe that mess. And what's going to happen is when the police pull people over, you are going to look suspicious. You're going to be agitated. You're going to be in a panic state. And that is going to put the police officer on guard. And when that happens, we have a likelihood of accidents. So no, you're not doing anybody favors by telling them that the police are out to get them, especially when we all know that that's just not true. So
it was kind of
like
when that happened.
Weeks
I
and
remember
stuff later,
that was one of his
it happened.
fears.
Yep, that was one of his
That's
fears.
interesting though, because what you're saying is that so that night he did whatever he was supposed to, whatever they told him to do, because he knew
He know that they was intimidated by him because he was so big.
And I'm sure that officer probably know who he is that ran his lights. They got it in the computer.
But what about, do you think that if he had complied, because I'm sure you guys have seen the full tape by now, right? Mm-hmm. And you must be thinking, woulda, coulda, shoulda, if he had that mentality going into it, let me just do what they're saying, and because it's just such an escalation when you see the full tape of, he's not, and maybe because he's not feeling too good, but yeah, and then he's like, put me on the ground, when he says, put me on the ground. And you ever look at it and go, man, I wish that time he had taken his own advice and just been like, okay, guys, take me wherever you want to take me.
Yes.
Do you think that a lot of people maybe came out of the woodwork because there was an opportunity, to grandstand, to be on stage, to, a lot of money got thrown around, which is part of what I'm exploring in this documentary. I mean, Black Lives Matter Global Network came out and said we raised $90 million plus, and they did this with his face. Just his face, or saying you had some association with him, could have gotten, garnered a lot of people money. Do you think that people took advantage of him?
Yeah, it's like they use it as what you say, a way of funding whatever they motivation was. And then like at sometimes when I went to the George Floyd Memorial, it was different individuals going around there saying donations for this, for Floyd, for this, and
Yeah.
you didn't know.
So that was a whole bunch of people grifting and getting money off of Black Death, a very, very popular Black Death at this juncture. That's nuts. People are just looking for a quick buck. They're looking for a quick buck, and they will use whatever they can to get that. So.
Know where they was coming from. You got a little metal box, and I don't know who you are. Where is this going?
You know, to meet with the president and the vice president, and for them to show their concern to our family, and for them to actually give an ear to our concerns and how we feel on the situation.
I know I have to be strong because that's what he would want me to do.
I ain't never met.
Hold on. Before they go any further, I want y'all to pay especially good attention to this part. Because as you remember, George Floyd's family was everywhere. They got gold caskets and all this other stuff for his funeral and things like that. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, they were no better than Black Lives Matter. They were no better than Black Lives Matter. It almost sounds like they had distanced themselves for years because of his drug use. And now all of a sudden they see an opportunity to come back in, get some money off of this and use their brother. So.
I ain't met a sister. I ain't never met a brother. None of them ever came here. And Floyd been living in this house. We've been in this house going on 6 years, am I right?
Yeah. But for the 4 years, no. He just...
They never wanted his stuff. I mean, I would think that if my son,
they didn't even come and look and see where the man lived at. They never came to see where Floyd lived. They never came and get none of his stuff. Nothing.
That was my oldest brother. I love him. I'm never going to get my brother back.
I would like to just like say one day, meet his daughter, because it's like, that's an extension of him.
Right.
That I just to be proud to just see one time.
Well, not his daughter. Now we found out he got more.
Well, they found out that wasn't true.
So you mean 3 kids came that ain't his?
Just one. I think they did a DNA check, and the boy's not his, and the other girl.
Are you serious?
Rumors, I don't know.
That's we gotta leave that to Maury. I don't do that. I don't do paternity.
Is that that's more?
That's Maury's camp. That's not what we do here.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
You guys, thank you so much. It was what a pleasure to sit here and talk to you guys. It was just absolutely amazing.
I don't understand. If that you loved your brother so much, y'all, I'll never get my brother back. This is true, and I can understand the pain. But if you were really that concerned, why didn't you go get his stuff? Why didn't you go ever see him in the 4 years that he lived there? You never went to his house. You never went to his home. You never. For me, that sounds suspect. I'm sorry. That's pretty suspicious. So, I don't know. Y'all can draw your own conclusions. But, exactly, Shani. They claim him after he's dead. Why don't you worry about the living? Why weren't you seeing him? Why weren't you going to check on him, making sure that he's not going back into the same habits, which obviously he was? If you would listen to his roommates, and there's a reason that you didn't see his roommates all over the flipping news and stuff like that, because they were going to tell you the truth. If he was on drugs, he didn't bring it back to the house. Didn't bring it back to the house. And we knew he had a drug issue, but he didn't do it here. And I love how people think that Candace is this big, bad, mean person. Yet here she is having a conversation with the two people who were more important in his life, more close to this man in his final days than the rest of his family. So there's that. So, all right, y'all. Listen, we're going to take a small commercial break. Thank y'all for joining me on Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix. I am your host, Mr. Full Service, and this is the funeral. Well, not the official funeral of the of BLM. They've already been gone. Yeah, they're out of here. So, and thank you for joining. But we'll be right back.
You imagine how absolutely traumatized that child was. And then you think to yourself, just a few years later, and you will have children that are wearing his shirt, referring to him as a hero, as some sort of savior, right? That's wrong. It's not right at all. And it was this case that I couldn't stay quiet on, and I had to make that video.
In 1998,
So what she's referring to is the thing that most people got confused. They got the story half wrong or half right, however you want to say it. A lot of people were like, oh, well, he pistol whipped a pregnant woman. He broke into their house with a group and all this other stuff. No, that's not how it actually went. So the child in this case was 7 years old. The child in this case actually identified George Floyd as the person who pistol whipped. I want you to understand that. Pistol whipped his mother. Now that is the person, and yeah, people can change. I get that. But this is the person who everybody is painting as some sort of folk hero. Nancy Pelosi goes on, thank you, George Floyd, for laying down your life to bring, no, absolutely not. Had the man not been doing what he was doing, he would have been alive today. Even his roommates had to say, yeah, I wish he had listened to his own advice. Get into the back of the car, get arrested, all this other stuff, just go to jail, be processed. But no, he chose otherwise. And unfortunately, he lost his life. So
he spent 10 months in prison for theft with a firearm. In 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. In 2004, just 2 years later, he spent another 10 months in prison for a cocaine offense. By the way, I am not saying that if you have a record, you don't deserve a second chance. I do draw the line when it comes to second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances.
Two things can be true at once. You can both say that George Floyd didn't deserve to die, no matter how you believe he died. Nobody deserves to die, in my opinion. And you can also say that objectively, this person that did die was not a saint. This person was not an angel. Okay, so my producer just sent me a link and a minute mark for George Floyd's 2019 arrest, which I haven't seen, so I'm about to watch it for the first time.
Okay, now, Floyd, come on out. Come on, Lee.
Okay, this is super interesting because he's saying mama again, and obviously I know that throughout the trial his girlfriend testified that he calls her mama, and the media made such a big deal saying that when he died he cried out for his mama, and they clearly misinterpreted that because this is a 2019 arrest. He's once again saying I want mama, so that seems pretty clear that he's talking about his girlfriend, and he's not crying out for his mother, which was a nice victim narrative.
You and Floyd, Mr. Floyd, excuse me, I'm assuming like most couples had pet names for each other?
Yeah.
And what were you saved in his phone as?
Mama.
Yeah. So that was another trick that they used in the news to make him more appealing to people. They made sure to suppress the story of his record and things like that. And if you even mentioned the fact that he had a drug addiction, that if you mentioned the fact that this may not have been a good person, you were excoriated. You were just absolutely railed. People came against you in force. How dare you? How dare you shine an accurate light on this man's life? This man died. He died for you. He died for you. So we can bring awareness to the police who were trying to kill. I hope it's not you next time. I can't tell you how many times people said that. You just better hope it's not you. I'm going to tell you now. I've been pulled over. I've been pulled over. And guess what? Guess what I don't do? What I'm not supposed to. Obviously. Hands tended to, have your insurance, have your license, all that good stuff, registration ready. Make sure your tags and stuff, everything is valid. You're good. Good to go. There's no drugs and all this other stuff in my system. That's a big key right there. I just gave y'all a major key. Shoot, Chris Rock back in the 90s put out this thing, how to not get messed up by the police. People, listen, I don't care if you're black, white, whatever, you need to watch that just because, might save your life. But Black Lives Matter, of course, like I said, they were going to use whatever tool that they had at their disposal to try to paint George Floyd as this just gentle giant who was just misunderstood, as opposed to a man who was back on drugs, back doing illegal activities, counterfeit bills. They were trying to pass these counterfeit bills off. The store owner tried to y'all just go away. Don't bring it back. But you know what? People don't want to hear that part. They don't want to talk about the truth. And if you spoke the truth about this case, it must be because you were grifting or for whatever reason. Junk was absolutely asinine. Hold on. So that's it.
You know Derek Chauvin.
I do. I was a Minneapolis police officer for 31 years.
Is it the same Derek Chauvin that the media has introduced the world to?
Not at all. Derek is quiet, somewhat quirky, not a big guy, very dependable, shows up to work every day. Derek is the kind of guy that you want to show up on your calls with you. He's very level-headed.
Derek, when I first supervised Derek, I was a sergeant and I was running a unit for Homeland Security. Derek got assigned onto my unit, and at the time he was living with his mom, which I thought was admirable that he wanted to help take care of his mom.
Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a big heart, and he always has put others before his own.
He was kind of a guy that was a little more of a loner. You know, some probably would have considered him socially awkward.
You described him as quirky, and somebody else kind of described him in that same way. What do you mean by that?
Kind of quiet, introverted. Sometimes he wears his uniform pants a little high on his boots. Just that way. You know,
maybe not the quarterback of the football team.
Not the quarterback of the football team.
Okay. Did he ever have any issues with other police officers? Was there ever any signs that he was particularly violent or had issues with people because of their skin color?
No, never. No, that is.
Now, I want you to know, there was a leak, an internal leak from the police department that Derek Chauvin worked at. In that leak, they spoke about his record of complaints and things like that. And in those complaints, there was a few that I would actually say were very, very questionable to why this man was still a police officer. Now, that being said, I don't know the validity of that leak. It could have been something that was forged, but if those leaks were valid, I do still have an issue with Derek Chauvin being a police officer. So I'll have to find the link. I'll have to place it on my Instagram, I'll probably put it on my Instagram, because I'm not really trying to post a lot of stuff to TikTok anymore, because TikTok likes to take your videos down without really explaining or letting you appeal anymore. So I'm just not going to go through at work. But these are people who were working. They were co-workers of Derek Chauvin. And what they're doing is they're setting up for people Derek Chauvin's personality, where they're painting him as kind of awkward guy. He was more introverted, things like that. He didn't have a bad rapport with the other police officers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what this is.
It's not the Derek I knew. And I don't believe what people are saying. It's made up. It's not true.
When you sentence my son, you will also be sentencing me. Plus the fact that when he is released, his father and I most likely will not be here.
Where is Derek today?
Derek is at Oak Park Heights Prison. He sits in a cell for 24 hours a day. He does not have any reading materials, no TV, no computer, no nothing. He just sits in the cell. And that's it. You sit and look at the four walls in your cell every single day.
What was your initial reaction when you saw that video, in terms of looking up and seeing, hey, that's Derek Chauvin, I know that guy?
He's somebody that would be hard to read for most people, but a nice guy.
So when you looked up at his face, you didn't see a monster, you just saw Derek looking as Derek has always looked, and the media perhaps reading into it.
They read into something that was not there. That is not the Derek that I knew. All of our department was painted with that same brush, which is unfair, and it's a lot of false narratives, because we have a good department.
And we heard earlier that he is spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. Do you ever think about his mental state?
Every day. Every day.
You don't wish that on anybody. There's an incredible amount of stress in the job alone. More or less, if somebody dies in your custody, that's about the worst thing that you can go through as a person and a police officer.
So they were basically trying to show that Derek Chauvin was not the inhuman monster that the media and the BLM organization painted him as. That if this man was a racist, there wasn't really a lot of evidence of him being a racist. If I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I did, George Floyd and Derek Chauvin were even in a photo together. Now, it was said that they may not have known each other well, but obviously in that kind of a situation, that means he does not mind being around black people, even being in photos. So I don't know, you take that as it is. But man, listen, think what you will of Derek Chauvin. I may not have personally cared for the man or by the leaked record, which may or may not be true. I may have not thought that he needed to be a police officer, but what I don't think is that he deserved what he got. So they over-sentenced this man. They charged him way too high. Seriously, they charged him way too much. And what's funny, I think it was yesterday, Macho was having a conversation with this guy named Kiki. And Kiki was telling us that, oh no, for a police officer, second-degree murder, you don't even have to prove intent or anything like this. Kiki, just so you know, that is actually a falsehood. That is not how second-degree murder in Ohio works. I had a video clipped, but I'm going to post that in a post, and I'm going to tag Mr. Kiki in that. I've come to the conclusion that there are certain people that you just cannot speak to. You can't have an honest conversation with a person who has overestimated their intelligence. So, yeah, that part. But he took it too. My thing about Chauvin is that he took it too far, but shouldn't be sitting and rotting for years and years. I used to say that I think there was just other things Derek Chauvin could have done. But the more I watch this documentary, the more I go back to the court cases, there's a lot more to it. So there was a crowd being gathered. Mr. Floyd was still in an agitated state. Turns out that his knee wasn't even in his neck. His knee was on his, literally resting on the shoulder blade. His foot is on the ground, which means majority of his weight isn't even on George Floyd. But, we'll play that clip so the experts can actually say that, because it doesn't mean very much when I say it. I'm just an outsider civilian like you guys on the outside looking in and trying to make sense of this thing. So once again, this is Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix. I am your host, Mr. Full Service, and we're going to take a slight break and we'll be right back. Hope to see y'all very, very soon.
standing side.
Ding dong, 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 ding dong.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Because of who you are, I give you glory. Because of who you are, I give you praise. Because of who you are, I will lift my voice and say, Lord, I worship you. Because of who you are, Lord, I worship you. Because of who you are, because of who you are, I give you glory. Because of who you are, I give you praise. Because of who you are, I will lift my voice and say, Lord, I worship you. Because of who you are, Lord, I worship you. Because of who you are, you see, you're Jehovah, my provider, Jehovah Nissi, Lord, you reign in victory. You're my Prince of Peace, and I worship you. Just because of who you are, I give you glory. Because of who you are, I give you praise.
Sing it.
Because of who you are, I will lift my voice and say, Lord, I worship you. Because of who you are,
Thank you, Jesus.
Lord, I worship you. Because of who you
Hallelujah.
are, you see,
We need you more than ever, Lord.
my provider,
My provider,
Jehovah Nissi,
Jehovah Nissi.
Lord, you reign. Shalom. You're my Prince of Peace, yes you are. And I worship you, not because of what you've done, but just because of who
Thank you, Lord.
you are.
Amen.
You are Jehovah, my provider. Oh, you made a way when there seemed to be no way. Jehovah Nissi, Lord, you reign, you reign, you reign.
Lord, you
reign in victory. Jehovah Shalom, you're my Prince of Peace. Yes, you are, and I worship you. I was born to worship. I love to worship.
Worship you because of who you are. So, welcome back to Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix. I am your host, Mr. Full Service, and that was Miss Vicky. Yo, I'm telling you, that is one of my absolute favorite songs. Man, it just, I'm telling you, it touches me. It touches me. Blesses my spirit. When I am down or anything like that, I just have to remember who he is. Jehovah Jireh, my provider. Man, so so far we have discussed, of course, who George Floyd was by the end of his life, what his roommates had to say about him, and we talked about who Derek Chauvin was and what his co-workers had to say about him. So now I think we need to get into some actual facts of the George Floyd case, because a lot of people have an opinion without actually knowing what happened in the case itself. So this clip is actually the store owner and showing you how the police even got called and things like that. So we're going to get that.
George Floyd was a semi-regular customer. He'd come around not so often, but he was someone we'd recognize, and he'd come here maybe to pay his phone bill or get phone services. So anytime a customer brings a counterfeit bill, and you see we have plenty of them, we tell them, hey, this is counterfeit. If the customer insists, then we call the police, and then the police has to ask them where they got it from. And that really hasn't ever happened. In my experience here, whenever we tell a customer that the bill is counterfeit, they immediately leave because they don't want to be involved with it.
How can you tell it's correct?
Just from our experience, yeah, there's some good ones, but a lot of times we know right away that they're fake just because of the way they have the color disfiguration, or the way they feel, the way they look. So usually we don't call the police on counterfeit money, because when we tell the customer that it's fake, they accept the fact and just leave. When he came in the store, he was with a friend of his. The friend of his was paying for some electronics repair, and all of the money he had was counterfeit. Because we knew the person, we told him, hey, we're not going to call the police, just take this money back. And
I need to point out something. The friend of his that they're talking about is actually his drug dealer.
And don't bring it back here again. And then a few minutes later, George Floyd made a purchase in the tobacco shop with a counterfeit bill, and the employee then called the police. They arrived about 45 minutes later and found George Floyd in his car, and that's when they approached him.
Hey, man. Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry. Dr. Ron Martinelli, forensic criminologist and certified medical investigator and police practices expert. Let me just preface this. You know, I have no dog in the fight here, all right? We classically get a lot of officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, but we take them from all sides. So my advocacy is for facts and evidence, not for people or entities. So if the officers are doing what they're supposed to be doing as they were trained to do it, I'm going to tell you. If they're not, I'm also going to tell you that.
What was your assessment of the police behavior in seeing the full video and seeing how things played out?
They make contact with Mr. Floyd, and that is totally appropriate because they're investigating a third person's report of criminality.
Stop moving. I'm not gonna do nothing. Put your hands behind your back then. I'm not gonna do nothing. Stop resisting, man.
Stand up.
Please, man.
Stand up.
Why you doing me like this?
Stand up. Come on.
Man.
We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car.
So for the officers, what they have to do is they have to begin an investigation to ask him probative questions, seeking more evidence to determine whether a crime has occurred.
All right, what's your name?
George.
We're here because it sounds like you gave a fake bill to the individuals in there.
Yeah.
So once they put the handcuffs on Mr. Floyd should have known, albeit he's under the influence of drugs,
Ouchie,
What
man.
are you on something right now?
No, nothing.
Because you acting real erratic.
that he must obey the officer's directions, orders, and commands.
That's called
He
excited
cannot
delirium.
resist arrest.
I hear you, but you are going to face this door right now.
Listen up, stop.
I don't anything, man. Please don't do that.
Take a seat.
I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going
No,
in.
you're not.
And so when Mr. Floyd gets in a car and he claims that he's claustrophobic,
Right. Claustrophobic is exactly what he said.
I'm claustrophobic, man. I'm claustrophobic.
Stay on.
I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
I think if I was an officer, I'd be saying, wait a minute, you showed up in a car. You wouldn't get in a car if you thought you were claustrophobic. The officers placed him in a position that's referred to as the maximum restraint position. In other words, he's prone, stomach down, on the ground.
So, as you can see, he was already in a heightened, excited state. He's claiming he's claustrophobic, even though he arrived in a car. Like, if you're claustrophobic, you're not riding in a car. Let's be real. If you're really claustrophobic, you're going to have to take some sort of medication to even get you into a car. So he obviously was not claustrophobic. This man was resisting the police officers. They tried to put him in the back seat. He didn't want to get in the back seat. They tried to walk him over to the curb. He wants to kneel in the streets. I mean, everything that you should not do, he was doing. And he was in such an agitated state that they even had to question, are you on something? Like, what have you taken? Have you taken any drugs? Are you not, like, what's going on? Like, you shouldn't be acting like this. Like, this is too much. And as you saw, when they first approached him in the first place, he was like, I'm sorry. Come on now. So basically, you sat there and waited for the police officers. You knew what you did was wrong, yet you sat there and waited for them. Something doesn't seem off about that to you guys, but you can't have these conversations with people who are already convinced. When a person is already convinced that they know all the facts, they know what they need to know, you can't tell them anything. So, I don't know. Let's go to this next one.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent. On May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him. You would agree, Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee is on the neck of Mr. Floyd.
Yes.
Would you agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
This man right here is the chief of Minneapolis Police Department, and he was as anti-Derek Chauvin as they came. Anti-Derek Chauvin as they came. He wanted Officer Chauvin burned. He was a scourge, all this other stuff. He absolutely turned his back. But then, of course, when the prosecutors approached him, like, hey, wouldn't it seem like his knee is actually on the shoulder, not on the neck? He even had to say yes. And that is a technique that was trained. Hey, Kiki, the thing about second-degree murder, you have to show that it was a recklessness. That's the difference. If this is a technique of control that is trained to the police officers, that does not indicate that it is second-degree murder because that was not a recklessness. Now, had his knee been on this man's flipping neck, actually asphyxiating him, yes, second-degree murder would have been valid. But Derek Chauvin wasn't convicted in a public court. He was convicted in the court of public opinion. Well, then he was convicted in a public court. So
they had to have the jury believe that it was a neck restraint, it was the knee on the neck, it was asphyxiation that killed George Floyd. However, there was a ton of evidence that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Now, how many times have you had this conversation with people who, like I said, were convinced that they knew what it was? Oh, that was the knee on the neck that killed him. He suffocated him. He killed that man by kneeling on him for 9 minutes, blah, blah, right? But they don't want to hear the second part. They don't want to talk about the drugs that the man had ingested. They don't want to talk about the fact that the man was already talking about he couldn't breathe while being put in the back seat of the car. They don't want to talk about the excited delirium because they were already convinced. Why? Because the news circulated. Have you ever heard of a syndrome called confirmation bias? So confirmation bias is one of those things where you get a piece of information and you hold on to it. No matter what evidence comes to contradict that little piece of evidence or that information that you got, everything else, nothing else matters, only what you know to be true. That is called confirmation bias. And unfortunately, that is very, very common. And as you can see, most people who you talk to about the George Floyd case, contrary to all the new evidence that has been presented, they still hold on to that little bit of information that they got in the beginning from the media and from BLM that said, oh, they kneeled on this man's neck.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, I ate too many drugs?
Yes, it did. Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd, and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances. It would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due.
This medical examiner tried to walk back his statement. He was trying his best to walk back his statement that George Floyd, of course, because of his size and things like that, and the way that his body was acclimated to drugs and things like that, that he did not ingest a lethal cocktail. And this is what the Washington Post and Politico and all this other stuff started circulating around, saying that they had destroyed the fact that George Floyd, or they had come against the fact that George Floyd had a lethal amount of fentanyl in the system. But as you can see by this chart, George Floyd, his level of fentanyl, his lethal level, the standard is 3. His was 11. But they keep saying, oh no, that's just, it just depends on how your body works, Okay, so if his body could take over 3 to 4 times the lethal level, that was a beast.
Due to fentanyl toxicity.
I know I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Take a seat. Here, come on out.
The autopsy is generally broken down by, number one, how the body is presented, and what his height and weight is, and then it goes through the neurological system, exterior trauma, interior trauma, but I go right to the cardiovascular system. And there I look at the heart weight. How much does the heart weigh? And then I take a look for key words. I compare the heart weight to the height and weight of the individual, to what the toxicology report says, and I look for certain words or evidence of something called cardiomegaly. Cardiomegaly means an enlarged heart. And if a person has cardiomegaly, their chances of sudden cardiac arrest rise by 150 times. Not 150%, 150 times.
Y'all catch that? 150 times. George Floyd's heart was enlarged. Cardiomegaly. That means he could have had a heart attack, which is why when you have conversations with people who just will not listen, like I said, and you mention this fact, that I've often asked people, like, what did George Floyd die of? Can you tell me? Did he die of asphyxiation? He died of them kneeling on his neck. So you're saying he died of asphyxiation. Well, what if I told you he wasn't kneeling on his neck, that he was kneeling on his shoulder? No. See, if they had never even approached him, well, he was involved in criminal activity. They were actually investigating. No, for a counterfeit bill, that don't. So you're saying that crime should not be investigated nor punished? It's weird. These are real conversations that I've had now.
That is significant. And then we have the whole issue of the police encounter and the basal metabolic rate rising. Think about him being agitated, chaotic, excited, and his heart is pumping, pumping, pumping. There is zero empirical forensic evidence, medical evidence of any biological mechanism, physiological mechanism that would have interfered with George Floyd's ability to get sufficient oxygenated blood up into the brain. There's zero evidence of that.
There was another passenger in the vehicle, and that passenger.
What he just said is something that the jury, I do not think, fully understood, unless, I'll be honest with you, I think that the jury was tainted. I believe that the jury was intimidated. I really do. That they did not want to be the ones who did not convict Derek Chauvin. So, but what he just said was, nobody can pinpoint, no medical examiner, no expert, no nothing was able to pinpoint. Was it Derek Chauvin and his knee on his shoulder that killed him? No. There was no asphyxiation. There was no compression, no nothing. The man, either he had a heart attack, he died from the fentanyl, he had an embolism. They can't tell you exactly what killed him. They can only tell you that the interaction that he had with the police that day did not help it. That was it. That the interaction that he had with the police that day is what aided in the expedition of his exit.
Passenger was Mr. Floyd's drug dealer. However, he did not end up providing helpful testimony because of his own criminal liability.
Okay, and why would you not answer those?
I'm fearful of criminal charges going forward. I have open charges that's not settled yet of my personal stuff.
So basically you are invoking your Fifth Amendment right against compelled self-incrimination?
Yes, sir.
There was some evidence that came out of chewed up pills that were found on the floor of the police car. It's very unclear to me why that evidence was not obtained earlier and presented to the jury. But I think if the jury had seen the entire picture, not only of Mr. Floyd's drug dependency, his multiple prior brushes with law enforcement, but his physical characteristics at the time of the incident and his ultimate death. Absent the interaction with the police, he could easily have died with the amount of drugs in his system with no knee on his neck or on his shoulder. And so to me, that would have suggested, if I were on that jury, reasonable doubt, but our system is such that a jury gets to decide that. Now, there were other factors, I think, that polluted the jury's ultimate ruling. Ultimately the jury reached its conclusion.
I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict, which is, I think it's overwhelming in my view.
We've got to get more confrontational, make sure that they know that we mean business.
I want to see the charge of the arresting officer take place. We are not talking about a split-second decision that was made incorrectly. I can't see coming to a different answer there. Thank you.
Real quickly, have you seen the body camera footage yourself?
No, I have not yet.
Right there. He's one of them. And that is the mayor of Minneapolis. Have you seen the body cam footage yet? No, I haven't. But I've already come to my conclusion that no matter what evidence that you present to me now, the police officers were guilty. Derek Chauvin was guilty of murdering George Floyd. I don't need to see anything else. And that's the mayor. You got Maxine Waters. You got Joe Biden out there talking about, oh, we got to push back. This jury better come to the right conclusion. Then you had the BLM organization itself making threats, saying that this city is going to burn if they don't make the right decision. That right there has tainted that jury pool. That right there tainted the jury pool. That man was not going to get a fair shake one way or the other. That probably should have been a bench trial. I don't know. Would have had to find a better way. But all right. So listen, we're gonna take a small commercial break. This is Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix, and I'm gonna tell y'all now. Have y'all checked out our merch yet? The Morning Fix merch. It's dope. It's by AJ's Rant Room. It's actually really, really good quality stuff. So if you have not gotten a chance to go get yourself some merchandise yet, yeah, you're gonna want to get that. Get with us. All right. I'm Mr. Full Service, Simply Sundays. We'll be right back.
Devil is a liar. God is exalted. Never be defeated.
Seems like all I could see was the struggle. Haunted by ghosts that lived in my past. Bound up in shackles of all my failures. Wondering how long is this gonna last? Then you look at this prisoner and say to me, son, stop fighting a fight, it's already been won. And I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. That I'm not who I used to be. I am redeemed. I'm redeemed. All my life I have been called unworthy, named by the voice of my shame and regret. But when I hear you whisper, child, lift up your head, I remember, oh God, you're not done with me yet. And I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. Now I'm not who I used to be, because I don't have to be the old man inside of me, cause his day is long dead and gone. Because I got a new name, a new life, I'm not the same, and a hold that will carry me home. I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain, cause I'm not who I used to be. I am redeemed. You set me free. So I'll
Good morning. Welcome to Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix. I am your host, Mr. Full Service. Man, rest in peace, Mr. Weaver. From Big Daddy Weave. That was, man, that song was I Am Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave. And let me tell you, it doesn't matter if you're not religious or anything like that. That's fine. If you don't believe, you don't believe. But I can tell you, with my whole heart, I believe. And I know that the wonderful thing about the God I serve is his grace is abundant. His grace knows no limits, knows no boundaries. you can be forgiven and you can walk in that forgiveness. You can be redeemed. You can come back because his grace is just sufficient. And I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord for salvation. I thank the Lord for not giving us what we deserve. Let's be real. If most of us could turn an internal lens on ourselves and really look at who we are. Have you ever lied before? You're a liar. You've ever thought about killing somebody before, like you've actually like been angry with your brother or sister? The Bible tells us that that's akin to murder. That right there. Have you looked at someone with lust? That means you have basically committed adultery. I mean, seriously. If we were just given the things that we absolutely deserve, there would not be a single soul in heaven. There would not be a human in heaven. Man. But because of grace. Because of redemption. So, all right. So, you are watching a very special edition of Simply Sundays because we are discussing The Greatest Lie Ever Sold, the documentary that is on the Daily Wire, that is streaming on the Daily Wire by Candace Owens. And so far, we have been talking about what was going on in the trial, who George Floyd was, what the real facts of that trial, what BLM has tried to claim is really going on. And I think we just got a few more clips. And of course, we'll be steady discussing this. So let's get back into it. Ooh, let me pause that. I want y'all to be able to read that. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. Malcolm Shabazz was a wise man.
There's a viciousness, there's almost a bloodthirst when one of these cases comes around. And nobody looks back, nobody asks any questions, nobody says sorry. It's just, you are being sacrificed so we can build this temple of Black Lives Matter. And there are so many individuals who deserve to have their story told. So Liz, I want to start with you. So being an anchor and having that position, how did you juggle being married as well to a police officer in terms of covering stories?
Well, I went to our management right away, before I even went on a date with Bob, as a matter of fact, to tell them that I was thinking about going on a date with this person at the time. And I said, ethically, I don't feel comfortable covering police union issues. And that was something that management was totally fine with.
So you mentioned that you were getting threats on Twitter, and I'm assuming that's where it began. Can you talk a little about what those threats were?
I think they started immediately within, I think, hours of the actual incident. They said that Bob Kroll and Liz Collin will be dead by the time the year ends. They came to the station where I worked and held a protest during the 6 o'clock news demanding that I be fired.
For?
Being married to a police officer. Yeah. I'm seeing this story from so many different lenses, as a wife, as a journalist, but as a mom, I think it's where it hit me the hardest.
I can imagine.
In the early days, I'm calling friends, hey, can you take Anthony? We have another death threat, or my parents are watching him for a few days. He doesn't know what's going on. I mean, you can't even explain this stuff to adults, nonetheless a 7-year-old child, and he happened to see a little clip of the news in the early days and said, wait a minute, so the police made a mistake and they're stealing stuff from Target?
A child, a 7-year-old can understand that. A 7-year-old can understand that there's something wrong with that. That makes no sense whatsoever. How is this helping your cause? You say that you're mad at the police, yet you're burning down, looting, and pillaging the communities. That is not helping. It's not helping. 7-year-old.
In his little mind, he knew that this did not make sense. This isn't okay. So this was a Black Lives Matter organized protest. 100 people were there, and we were out of town. After that happened, I sent an email to our newsroom, and I said, this seems newsworthy. There was a state rep candidate there that was beating me in effigy. They made piñatas of Bob and I dressed as Klansmen.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
Slow down here. You're telling me that they made piñatas of you in effigy, and they beat them?
With bats.
John Thompson did with a stick.
In our driveway. This is the man running to be a state representative in Minnesota.
In your driveway.
Overwhelmingly elected.
Bob Crow and anybody who support his racist ass. Bob Crow, I said it.
I mean, it was horrendous, absolutely awful. And I got in trouble for pitching that as a story. We had reporters tweeting their alliance with Black Lives Matter using that hashtag after this movement, talking about it's okay to align yourself with this group and supporting Black Lives Matter. And that was fine. But I was no longer wanted there, and that was pretty clear.
What was the process of making these? I mean, if you've ever been so angry you wanted to make a piñata, that's where I'm at. Just f*** them. Just absolutely f*** them. That's where I'm at.
So when did you make the decision to leave?
My contract was up in January of this last year, and I had been blackballed in the market.
If I can interject, they were successful in destroying her career because she had a wonderful career trajectory going. She's a small town, Worthington, Minnesota local. She was a local favorite. She was the primary fill-in for the two main anchors. She had a weekend anchor. The ratings that they had were huge. Everybody loved her. And then all of a sudden, this twist. So I watched it destroy her and destroy her career, something that she's very good at and a lot better, quite frankly, than some of her competitors or her replacements.
So that young lady was an anchor, a news anchor up there in Minneapolis, and they doxed her simply because she was married to a police union rep. They didn't want her anywhere around. And of course, just because Mr. Kroll was a police officer, all of a sudden he's racist. So the police are just racist, et cetera, et cetera. But that's something that BLM, they do. They try to intimidate. They try to remove people who are what they see as opposition by death threats. Death threats. Yeah, that helps. What Black life did that help? Just absolute lunacy. Lunacy. That, that story is not unique. It's not uncommon. Those are the tactics that Black Lives Matter used. And then those people who said that they supported Black lives, yeah. I'll show you another one. Wrong one. Hold on.
There's a viciousness. There's almost a...
Sorry about that. Wrong video. Thought I had it marked. I'm going to show you this last one. Then we're gonna have some discussions. Uh-oh. Oh no. Might not have saved. Oh no. I hope I saved the video correctly. I don't think I did. Well, shucks. Darn. See, this is why I need Mandy. Mandy is so much better at this stuff than I am. But, let me see. Oh, might be the right one. Yeah, this one.
My name's Fraser Ross, and I own retail stores in Los Angeles, California.
During the George Floyd protests that swept the nation, what happened?
We were looted for over $400,000 worth of merchandise.
Wow.
It was a disaster.
You then went online, and what did you observe that you thought was out of the ordinary?
Chrissy Teigen had posted on her Instagram, I'll help the protesters get out of jail. Then she said, well, let me up it to another 100,000. Now, when you have approximately 30 million followers at the time, you can start a movement, and people say, oh, well, she's going to bail me out and everything. And then, you know, you've got celebrities like Jennifer Garner giving 4 hearts to that post. Well, they all live in gated communities, and it's not their stuff being destroyed.
And you had just been looted.
Yeah, I went online and posted an Instagram of the store being looted, and I tagged, thanks, Chrissy. She wrote under this post, well, like anyone's really shopped there for 10 years.
So her instinct after seeing that your store had been actually looted, her response is, well, no one shops at your store anyway. So she was not sympathetic to the victim in this circumstance.
Not one bit. But Jen Atkins was actually worse.
Jen Atkins, she's a friend of Chrissy Teigen. You've tagged her in this post because you sell her products. She comments on this post as well.
Right.
Basically saying, use the shampoo to clean up the graffiti.
And my looting cream comes out in October.
So they're having fun.
They're mocking the looting. Right. You should be in federal prison if you're inciting violence with that many people following you.
So Dana decides to jump in and call you and Kitson a racist store because you were upset that your store was looted.
Yeah.
This made you a racist somehow.
Right.
I want you to catch that. So this woman, Dana, chimes in on these posts, calls this man for what? These are the tactics. They don't change because they work, because they garner a visceral response. You say the words racism and racist and things like that, and people's ears perk up. Oh, he's a racist. Oh, you don't even need evidence of a person being racist anymore. All you need is an accusation. Seriously. Oh, he's racist. He's a racist because he was upset about his store being looted. Make that make sense. You have a store. They steal and rob, pillage, all this other stuff for over $400,000. And you're upset and you're mad about it. But no, you don't get to be. You're a racist if you are. And anybody who gets caught looting, I'm going to bail them out. As opposed to saying, you know what they did to your store wasn't right. Let me here, this $200,000. Let me give that to you so you can replace your livelihood. But no, Chrissy Teigen's like, nah, I'm going to bail out the looters. So hey, you guys go ahead. You burn down, loot, pillage, all you want to do. And I'm gonna bail you out. But this is also the left. This is what the left did. Kamala Harris and them putting together money to bail out these rioters and protesters, not to mention flying these protesters and rioters to different cities. Things that make you go,
Right.
So this was quite literally blaming the victim. Then what happened?
She sends a DM saying, well, before we get on the phone, you're going to have to apologize to Chrissy Teigen, and then I'll take down the post.
Dana Omari, from her Instagram account, wrote exactly this. You need to make a formal public apology for blaming a woman of color, she was referring to Chrissy Teigen, for your store being looted. And Chrissy needs to be named. In this apology, you should mention it was insensitive to place the blame on a single person, and that the true cause of the riots is the mishandling of police brutality toward George Floyd and the Black community as a whole. You should also say that while you are devastated by the looting of your store, you recognize it comes from a place of privilege to be concerned about replaceable items when others are protesting for their rights to live. If you apologize, I will happily remove all posts concerning your store. How does that sound? So this blogger, just to recap, has essentially jumped in on behalf of Chrissy Teigen.
Right. So we got on the phone for 53 minutes, and most of the conversation was, you need to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. I said, I'm not apologizing to her. There's no reason to apologize to Chrissy Teigen. But what are you looking for? Are you looking for money? I was worried that how aggressive they were, and the looting was still approaching. And my main store, the value in that store is much greater than the store that got looted.
Right. So because she's publicly posted your store
Right.
as being owned by a racist,
Right.
concerned that they're going to come loot you some more. Who was the check written out to?
Act Blue.
To Act Blue.
Right. Which
Okay.
is BLM.
Black Lives Matter. So
Right.
she was basically saying, if you make a donation to Black Lives Matter.
I'll take down the post.
Okay.
And then after she got out the conversation with me, she texts me from a phone number. And if you don't make the donation, I'm going to repost this. I'm going to make another post, an unfortunate post that won't be good.
So let me ask you a question. Chrissy Teigen, Jen Atkin, a blogger in which they both follow. Why do you think they felt the need to get involved on such a level and to be so supportive of the looting?
Well, I think there was a side that they felt that it would help them become relevant and heroes and everything.
Did Dana mention anything to you about Chrissy Teigen and her having a relationship?
Yes, she said Chrissy Teigen thanked me for what she did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she thanked the blogger
Yes.
for calling you a racist.
Yes.
And I guess having an outrage
Yes.
mob
Yeah.
descend on you online.
Yes.
So, loot, pillage, steal, whatever you want to do. If you say anything against it, you're a racist, and you can be blackmailed. Now, that's what they want to make sure you know. We will blackmail you into silence. And matter of fact, not only will we blackmail you, we will make you apologize. We will make you apologize for ever questioning us, for ever daring to say anything negative against us. And this is the organization. This is Black Lives Matter. This is this frenzy. This is ignorance. Absolute ignorance. And I'm glad Ding Dong, the witch is dead. I'm glad that they got exposed. Patrice Cullors walked away from the organization a year ago. One of their founders, the male co-founder, was arrested years ago. For a sex ring. Yeah, I wonder about that. Wonder if any of that insurance money found its way into the BLM's pockets. David Dorn lost his life because he was trying to save a friend's business or whatever. There was a police officer. He was a police chief trying to save a business, and they ended up killing him because they were looting. Literally billions of dollars in damages. And you were wrong for questioning it. But trust me, they're quick to point out January the 6th. Oh, look at that. They were in our nation's capital throwing poo and toilet paper and blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's a great story, bro. Junk is nuts. And what's funny is the numbers don't make sense. I'm going to tell y'all some facts, and you can go look these up. I actually implore you to fact check me. There are on average about nine unarmed Black people shot by the police per year. Now, when I say unarmed, that doesn't mean that they are just innocent. They're not doing anything. That just means they don't have a gun or a weapon at the time. Now, that actually includes people who are resisting the arrest, trying to grab the police officer's gun, trying to run them over, trying to take this police officer out, throwing elbows, whatever, trying to knock the police officer out, and they end up getting killed by the police officer. Now, I will say on average, there's about 2 unjustifiable police homicides to Black people per year. 2. That's the average. So this whole movement is funded off of police violence and police killing Black people in the streets. On average, two Black people. And what's sad is this organization has the community so tied up in their vitriol that they can tell you the last people that got killed by the police. During an election cycle. The saddest part. During an election cycle, they can tell you the last 2-3 people, Black people killed by the police. But I guarantee you, they can't tell you who was the last black person killed in the community. Because they don't really care. They don't care. If you really cared about black lives, why are we hyper-focused on the smallest amount of homicides? Why don't we talk about the actual greater number? What is the leading killer of black people in America? What is the number one killer of black people in America? Abortion. Yeah, abortion. Now, if we want to talk about the homicide, of course, shooting and gang violence, stuff like that, it's close second. But you're talking about almost 30 million black people aborted since 1972. But BLM, the left, all this other stuff will tell you, oh, it's good for our community. Yeah, that's why our numbers have been stagnated. Cities like New York City, where you're having more abortions than births. Yeah. Then, of course, we hear the rhetoric of, well, black people can't be racist. Oh, I love that one. Black people can't be racist because racism depends on a system of power that black people, yada, 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 don't have. Okay, so we don't have black mayors. We don't have black chiefs of police. We don't have black boards of education. We don't have black bankers. We don't have black banks. We don't have black businesses. We don't have. In order for you to believe that, you have to believe that black people are powerless in America. I.e., pushed victimhood, soft bigotry, low expectation, right there. I don't believe that. I believe anybody can be a racist because I've met people who are racist. And it seems like the only people who say that black people can't be racist are usually the people who are ready to say some really racist stuff. They're ready to say the most racist stuff. As a matter of fact, if you don't believe me about the policing thing, there was a study done by a Harvard professor named Roland Fryer. Now, Mr. Roland Fryer was as left as they come. He was a progressive leftist who really believed that the police were out there just taking out black people, or just were quicker to gun down black men, should I say. And he ended up doing this study where he took some of the major cities and stuff like that and actually ran the numbers, went by the police reports and stuff like that. And what he found was the opposite of what he actually set out to prove. And this is what was so funny. He didn't like it. He didn't like the numbers that he ended up coming with. So he fired the whole staff, hired a new staff, did the numbers again and tried to include some different factors. Same results. He found that the police were less likely to shoot a black person. But here, I'm going to let Larry Elder tell you about it.
Back to the article, The Truth Behind Racial Disparities in Fatal Police Shootings. As I said before, this has been thoroughly examined by academicians, by the federal government. This so-called pattern is simply not there. One of the authors of this study, Joseph Cesario, the professor from the University of Maryland, quote, "We found that the race of the officer doesn't matter when it comes to predicting whether black or white citizens are shot. If anything, black citizens are more likely to have been shot by black officers, but this is because black officers are drawn from the same population that they police. So the more black citizens there are in the community, the more black police officers there are." Many people ask, he says, whether black or white citizens are more likely to be shot and why. We found that violent crime rates are the driving force behind fatal shootings. Let me just say that one more time. We find that violent crime rates are the driving force behind fatal shootings. Well, duh. Our data show that the rate of crime by each group correlates with the likelihood of citizens from that racial group being shot. If you live in a county that has a lot of white people committing crimes, white people are more likely to be shot. If you live in a county that has a lot of black people committing crimes, black people are more likely to be shot. It's the best predictor we have of all fatal police shootings, end of quote. Study also says the vast majority, between 90 and 95% of the civilians shot by officers, were actively attacking the police or other citizens when they were shot. The vast majority, between 90 and 95, I'm reading this again for the young lady that says that I was defending the officers that were involved in the killing of George Floyd. So since she has difficulty grasping me when I speak, I just want to do it 2 times for you, just for you. The vast majority, between 90 and 95, of civilians shot by officers were actively attacking police or other citizens when they were shot. 90% also were armed with a weapon when they were shot. The horrific cases of accidental shootings, like mistaking a cell phone for a gun, are rare, said the co-author of the study. Quote, this is him again. We hear about the really horrendous and tragic cases of police shootings for a reason. They're awful cases. They have major implications for police-community relations, and so they should get attention. But this ends up skewing perceptions about police shootings and leads people to believe that all fatal shootings are similar to the ones we hear about, and that's just not the case, end of quote. Now, in one recent year, I think there were about 300 Americans injured by lightning. And you look at the number of unarmed blacks who were killed by the police. Frankly, as a black man, you are more likely to be injured by lightning than to be an unarmed black man killed by the police. That is how rare it is. And frankly, I don't know anybody that's been hit by lightning. Do you?
I couldn't say it better myself. That, ladies and gentlemen, was Mr. Larry Elder. And that right there, love some Larry Elder. So this is the conclusion that we've come to. Do Black Lives Matter? Yeah. We'll say, to remove myself from the situation. People already know that Black Lives Matter, just like we know white lives matter, Asian lives matter, this life matter, that life matters. And the police are not out there with flipping execution squads, hunting down innocent black people. Majority of the people who are end up being shot by the police are shooting at the police or committing crimes. Things that could get them killed. If you're sitting there shooting up a flipping neighborhood and the police takes you out, guess what? I do not feel sorry for you. If the police try to arrest you and you suffer from excited delirium and you decide to ingest the drugs and the drugs end up killing you, I'm sorry. I don't feel bad for you. I hate that you were a drug addict because I can see how drugs have affected other people's families and things like that, and my own family for that matter. But at the same time, I'm not going to make a martyr out of you. I'm sorry, I'm not. With everything going on in our country, we need unity more than anything. We have threats of nuclear war, rumors of war at every flipping turn, inflation skyrocketing, food shortages, energy, energy costs. And we can sit there and thank that the current administration for majority of those. Crisis at the flipping border, more fentanyl coming through the southern border. Fentanyl being one of the leading causes of death in people ages 18 to 45 in our country now. Craziness. So I am I'm glad that the organization, the machine, the movement, all that other stuff has been exposed for what they are, a detriment to the Black community. So, and that's, as Forrest would say, for now, that's all I got to say about that. So I will probably be talking more about this on lives on TikTok and other social media apps and stuff this week. But that right there, there's more, of course. If you have not gotten a chance to watch the full documentary, it's really informative. It's really, really informative, and it goes further into depth. We just clipped specific parts of that just because I wanted people to get a better idea of what happened at the trial, who Derek Chauvin really was, who George Floyd was, the addiction that he was going through, what BLM tried to turn it into. So please go to Daily Wire and watch it. And while you're there, check out What is a Woman by Matt Walsh, which is another one we need to discuss. But as for right now, it is time to go to Nana's Table. All right, so we got a nice one for y'all today. This is one of the recipes that I've taken from Tasty. And if you don't follow Tasty on YouTube, what are you doing with your life? Tasty shows you a lot of easy ways to make convenient, quick meals. And this is one of the ones I've done. And when I tell you this one right, oh, you know what? Let me talk. I'm a slobber. I'm going to just show you. Listen, that right there, that garlic lemon chicken, the chicken thighs. First of all, if you guys aren't cooking with chicken thighs, if y'all are still on cooking chicken breasts and stuff like that, I recommend you try switching up your recipes and using chicken thighs every now and then because, oh, I'm sorry. So the chicken thighs, they keep the juice and they just absorb all that flavor. You had the heavy cream, you had the Parmesan cheese, you got the pepper, thyme, paprika, all this stuff gets absorbed, and it also goes into the spinach. That spinach is so flippin' flavorful. Not like me, I changed the recipe slightly by adding bacon. Yeah, I put bacon in mine. So AJ, don't you do that. You know what? I'm going to have a vegan recipe for AJ next week. That's what we're going to do for next week. But I put crispy bacon. Like I brush the bacon with like syrup and I cook it up like that. Crumble it up after it's nice and crispy and add that into, oh my gosh, you're talking about, whew, sheesh, I'm telling you. Well, y'all listen. That has been Simply Sundays on the Morning Fix radio show. I have been your host, Mr. Full Service. Make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays and catch the Morning Fix radio show. They are streaming on Twitch and YouTube, and I'm not sure everywhere that they're switching. They might be streaming on Facebook. I can't remember all the apps that they're streaming on, but he's informative. He brings in the facts. He brings in receipts. He brings in the guests because he wants to actually have these conversations. He talks to people who have dissenting opinions. even though some of the people who have dissenting opinions, I feel are very, very disingenuous. So thank y'all for coming in. It's Simply Sundays, and we will be back at it next week. Now, next week, of course, I'm trying to get another one of our friends, Jelani Gibbons. I am going to try to do an interview with Mr. Jelani, have a nice little sit down so we can understand more of his politics and what he brings to the table as a Black conservative in the Washington state area. So that should be a really fun and exciting show. Plus, of course, we'll bring up the current events from the week. So y'all, thank y'all again so much for joining us on Simply Sundays. Make sure you get some merch and go check out my boy Macho. All right. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.
Up today with a smile on my face. Sounds like a song I wrote yesterday, but I feel that way again. I'm feeling real good again. Like a good umbrella on a rainy day, or a road trip riding on a full tank. I feel real good again. I'm feeling real good again. And everything will be okay, cause all my blues are gone away. So I just gotta sing the happy song. Shining so bright, so bright. I gotta say that twice. I said I can see the sun and it's shining bright. I can see the sun and it's shining bright. And everything will be okay, cause all my blues are